Hi everyone, welcome to my podcast. This podcast is called Mon Inspiration Podcast. I also have an Instagram called Mon Inspiration. This podcast is simply for sharing our homeschool style, thoughts, ideas, strategies, or any other topics that may come up. So today I'm going to be interviewing my husband, asking him just a few questions about Montessori and what it's done for us. And this podcast, the age group that we are talking about today is mostly for the primary ages, 3 through 6. All right, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name's Erin. I'm Rice's husband, and I'm the husband and dad in our homeschool Montessori environment.
So first question, what made you find an interest in Montessori?
Well, the biggest driving factor was you brought it to my attention. I know when our child was born and the first couple of years during those baby years, you started kind of looking at how we're gonna go about, school's going to sneak up on us fast and we need to kind of look at what's out there and what might be options. And you kind of showed this to me. I think you found it online through Instagram probably. And it was something that was foreign to me. I hadn't heard of it or seen it before. I have a more traditional school background. And I looked at it and thought it was cool. The interest for me was like, the child learning to be independent, do it themselves, and when they're in a classroom setting, although this doesn't apply to our homeschool setting, when they're in a classroom setting, I thought it was just really cool and unique that they're in a mixed age group, so to speak, just not all the same age. You've got these groups of kids and the older ones help the younger ones and the younger ones look up to the older ones. I thought it was a cool sense of community.
Yeah, it's definitely very different from what you and I grew up with.
For sure, very different.
I remember when we were in the baby stage and just thinking, okay, we had our baby. Within the first year, it was like, okay, we're parents. Now
we were like in survival mode at first.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, our kid's gonna get older. What type of education would we want to have our child have? So it was very just, for me, at the start, it was kind of like, I'm just going to see what's out there. What's different than the traditional schooling that we were used to growing up. Second question, do you prefer Montessori over the traditional schooling that we grew up with?
Well, I can say, yeah, I prefer it, but that's more of me looking at it like, hey, this is new, different, and there's plenty of positives from traditional school, but the positives for the Montessori method and Montessori learning to me are what we talked about, kind of what drew me in or what interested me. It's the idea of them having this independence, a focus on life skills over memorization. The whole concept of concrete to abstract, that's the part that to me, when it's brought up and you talk about it, it's like, okay, yes, that makes sense. But it's not something that was just actively occurring to me beforehand. It's something that you had to point out. And now that I see it, I can't unsee it. Every time our child's learning something, every time our child's, going through the progression toward their end goal, I just watch that progression of concrete to abstract. And to me, that's just so cool compared to what you and I grew up with.
Right, like, even when you say concrete to abstract, we have been reading to our child ever since like day one, basically.
Since the womb.
And yeah, since the womb. And it's something that's, wow, let's just not look at this in a book. Let's actually go see it with our own eyes. It's that seeing farm animals for the first time, or going to a volcanic national park, for the first time. It's very like, wow.
Yeah, connecting what our child sees in a book or we read to her in a book, seeing that in person and physically being able to touch it, feel it, smell the air, be able to feel the temperature outside in these different places or in this different environment, the smells that come with it, the experience of the learning is what's really cool to me.
Right, and I think Montessori uses a lot of, especially in the primary ages, between 3 to 6, they use a lot of the senses to learn. Touch, smell.
Right.
Everything's hands-on. So that's what I think. Just from your answer,
it brings out the kid in me. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Next question. Do you think our child has benefited from Montessori?
Wholesale, yes. I think that from what I can see and what I've seen, that the Montessori method, it's not unique to our child necessarily. It just flat out speaks to the learning process of a child, that curiosity state of, yeah, it's great to, play with a car, but how does all that work? With the wheels turning and rolling. And the Montessori method will break that down with the geometric solids, and all these different things that you do in the learning process that helps the child figure things out. The curiosity that they have toward learning is just natural, and it just kind of, I guess, acts like a guide or a propellant for that.
Right. I feel like Montessori does a lot of not necessarily going with the flow. I don't know if that's the right phrase for it, but just nurturing the child's natural interest of learning something. Right.
We don't have, I think you and I have discussed this at length in private, but here it is for your podcast. I don't think as kids we want to sit still and learn in this, very rigid environment.
Strict.
Where it's, now we're doing science, now we're doing literature, now we're doing math. And
sitting at a desk for 7 hours.
Right, without any change in your environment and without any autonomy. Even children, we see it, all the time in our child, and I'm sure parents out there can speak to this. They want autonomy at some level. Whatever they think is possible, they're going to push that boundary anyway.
Right.
So they want to be able to make choices, and by giving the child the choice, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. They really go after it more.
Right. Well, even when you Google images of Montessori classrooms or take a tour of a Montessori school, it's like the children get to move around. There's lots of movement happening, and they just get to make their own, not necessarily their complete own decision. There's guidance, but they get to choose certain things or certain subjects that they want to learn, instead of sitting in a desk and saying, okay, it's time for math, it's time for science, it's
Yeah, it helps kind of shape going forward, but they make that initial emphasis of, hey, this is what I like, this is what I want.
And our child definitely likes to move around.
Yeah. Sitting still isn't in the cards necessarily.
Okay, next question. So, what have you learned from our Montessori homeschooling journey? And I know that's a very big question. It could go a million different directions. But what's like the first thought that you come up with when you see us homeschooling? Like when you when you see us homeschooling.
There are times where I can peek in on you guys while you're in the midst of everything and you don't see me. And those are like really fulfilling to me because I see the progression. The progression of our child being just introduced to something and being very excited, but also having that challenge of not quite getting it. There's more to learn, doesn't quite have a full understanding of whatever the concept is, and then that progression toward it. It's just fulfilling to me, and I guess this might be the homeschool part of our Montessori experience, because that's something I can see on a regular basis.
Right.
From the Montessori perspective in particular, that is, what have I learned from it? Like everything. This is all new to me. I'm a beginner just like you.
Yeah.
Neither of us had any exposure to it before. And so every process and lesson that's learned is...
It's almost like you learn it too.
I'm learning at the same time. And sometimes our child gets it before I do,
Yeah, like the 3-step process to learning basically any object in our room, whether it's numbers 1 through 9, like that whole 3-step process there's a process to learning things in Montessori, but that even with that, you and I were both just like amazed with how that process works.
Blew our minds.
Like this is 1, show me 1, and then what is this? That 3-step process.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question. Do you think our homeschool experience has had an effect on our marriage? Like, how we work together? Or, like, just you and me? How do you think Montessori has affected the way maybe that you are as a person, maybe that I am as a person? Like, I think...
Well, yeah, I think there's been an effect, and I think it's 99%, maybe we can say 100% positive, because when we have a homeschool, so I guess two things here, Montessori and homeschool. The idea of it being homeschool for us, that's been a huge positive, because it's like we're in this as a team. We're together. I recognize and respect and appreciate the fact that you do 99% of the active teaching with our child. But I also appreciate and love the opportunities that we have to sit down and discuss how you're about to approach something the next day, or what might be a good strategy for this. And we, I guess, game plan in a way, how to go about a lesson. I think it's helped in our communication, because there's a level of you leading me through it, and then there's a level of me leading you through other parts, and we bounce ideas off of each other, because we have very different, we had the same kind of traditional schooling, but we have very different ways of learning.
And just working as a team. Like, I think we've found a different way to work as a team together, because we work as a team with other things in our marriage, like financial issues, or I don't know, anything. It's
almost like it's just given us another avenue to put our teamwork to the test, or to put our communication in action. I think there are some aspects of any marriage where you've got this tool belt of, do you communicate with your spouse? Do you, listen to your spouse? Do you work as a team together? And there are parts of the day, week, or month where you're not using those tools because you're on, I guess, like cruise control or something. And the idea of Montessori at home, it gives us the chance to really, work with each other. And when I say work with each other, it's not work, but, it's us spending time together.
Yeah, almost like quality time together.
Right.
Learning together, working together, even if it's in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah, and when I think there was a time when you were kind of introducing me to the idea of our child learning these practical life skills, and the idea of, okay, here's like a nylon knife that our child's going to learn to cut food with. Yeah. And they were 2.5, something like that. And I kind of looked at it sideways like, are you sure about this? But we, like, number one, I guess it'll be safe, but they're not going to cut things very well. It's going to be a waste of time, but it's improved and it's gotten better, and it's like a whole process in and of itself there.
Yeah, the different stages of cutting things in the kitchen. I mean, I know that we're learning, and this is like coming from a Montessori beginners type environment, like,
right, we didn't know anybody that had Montessori.
Yeah. We're
Neither
the only
of us
ones.
did. Yeah,
the only ones. So we're just learning this like literally together. So I think that's what's helped our marriage. It hasn't been a negative.
No,
it hasn't been a negative for our marriage.
There are so many times where you probably can see it on my face when you're explaining something to me, where a light bulb goes off, and vice versa. If you're reading through something and you're like, what is it getting at here? And we talk through it, and it's like, ding. Yeah. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. Even, I don't know. For example, we recently were just learning how to put the binomial cube together.
Yeah, might as well be a Rubik's Cube when we first opened it.
Yeah, even just simple things like that. I think it's been good for our marriage, and not just for our child, but also like for us, because everything's just new and fresh.
I also really like that it gives us an opportunity to spend time together and quote unquote problem solve when it comes to like how are we handling the curriculum, or how you're going to handle this lesson. And we're working through stuff that's not always like grown up stuff. Like it's really fun to not be like talking about grown up stuff all the time.
Right. It is. Yeah, you make a really, really good point.
It's a relief sometimes.
Okay, so do you have any questions for me?
I do. So, selecting or coming across and finding like the Montessori method, what went into your decision-making process if you were comparing that to other educational methods out there?
So it might sound silly, but part of my process to finding Montessori was basically through Instagram, basically through hashtags like hashtag Montessori or hashtag Montessori homeschool. And this particular Instagram account called Montessori Inspired Co. was like the main Instagram account to show me what Montessori could be at home. Because Montessori is very different from being in a Montessori school versus being here, Montessori homeschool.
Right.
But that account also opened my eyes to understanding what Montessori is. So thank you.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out. So there was Instagram, and it took a lot of time to actually find what Montessori is, but I guess that would lead to your next question.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what kind of challenges you came across with Montessori, whether it was the discovery phase or now that we're kind of in it and, doing it, are there parts of it that are challenging to you or obstacles that you find like difficult?
So I guess I can talk about several different challenges since the beginning. But in the beginning, it was first, I went on Instagram, and because I'm a big Instagram person, I like Instagram more than Facebook and Twitter. But when we were in the baby stages still, I found these wooden toys, and then I was just like thinking to myself, like, whoa, these wooden toys are so pretty, they're beautiful, they're attractive, they make you want to play. So that's what started it. And then the wooden toys eventually led to Waldorf education. And then there were some other posts that would mention Montessori toys. So that right there was the first challenge, was basically understanding like Montessori toys, like what is Montessori? And, you know, I would Google and trying to understand it, and, you know, Google brings up a million things, and then,
hard to get like a tight definition.
Yeah, my next question was, you know, what is sensorial? Like, what do they mean about sensorial? What are sensorial materials? And what do they mean they teach culture? There were just so many questions because Montessori is just so big, and it was overwhelming in the beginning because I started from scratch. I started with nothing. Right. And so that was like a challenge in itself, just trying to find the difference between Montessori toys, and Waldorf education. Those three things. Gotcha. I guess another challenge, would be, since in the beginning I was just looking at Montessori curriculum, and I was trying to find everything for free. And everyone does Montessori differently. And even when you do run into a manual that you like or a curriculum that you like, everybody still does it differently. Yeah. So it was sort of hard for me to find which, I guess, traditional Montessori curriculum was, because there's also different certifications. There's, I think, the American Montessori Society, and then there's like traditional Montessori from Europe, which Dr. Montessori obviously created, and then there's just different versions. So I wanted to try and find
something a little bit more standardized.
I guess, and I think Montessori Inspired Co. is the person that inspired me to pick one thing and just go with it. One or two things that you see, or curriculum that you see, and just go with it.
For consistency's sake.
Yeah, because, I mean, you remember the times where I was trying to find everything for free, and it was frustrating, and I was like stressful, and then everybody on Instagram has their own way of teaching something, and I was just overwhelmed. Like, am I teaching it the right way? And then, you know, we get our first bead stare, and I'm trying to teach, you know, our child how to use it. And it was frustrating the first time because I didn't know that you're kind of supposed to just start off with 3 to 4 objects at a time. So that was like a huge eye-opener for me in the beginning when we first started. Right. But I would say those would be like the two main challenges, is finding out what Montessori is, and then finding out what type of curriculum that you want to use, because I personally found it really hard to use anything or find things that were for free, like here, bits and pieces here and there. And
yeah, it was tough because you were essentially, you know, searching around, you know, online and cherry picking from one place to another. Like, I like this, and trying to figure out how to, like, I guess, mesh all of those into one coherent.
There wasn't like
curriculum.
A flow.
Yeah.
There wasn't a flow. It's just here and here and here. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and it was frustrating.
Yeah. Last question for you was a very, very rhetorical question here. Do you find Montessori homeschooling to be rewarding?
Yeah, definitely.
How so?
Yeah, for sure. Because, you know, we started off with nothing, and, well, not nothing. We started off with pretty much like every plastic toy on the planet.
Yeah, the kinds of things that you get at baby showers and first birthdays.
Right. We started off there, but it's just, for me, I'm not like trying to brag about myself, but for me, it makes me feel good knowing like where we started and where we are now. Like, where we started with lots of lights and sounds and plastic toys, and versus like now, like we actually know what a Montessori material is, and just watching our child learn.
The creativity that is just drawn out of our child, right, is really cool to watch.
Right. And I'm sure her creativity would skyrocket even with, you know, if we didn't know all the ins and the outs to Montessori. Right. But I think that just having Montessori in our lives has been very beneficial. And we've seen a lot of change, like within or how our child thinks.
Yeah.
And you know, what's also rewarding about it is just watching, you know, we started from here and it was stressful for the both of us, for me and, you know, our child,
right.
learning it. And then now we're here and it's like, wow, look at all of the lessons that we have done. We have done so many lessons. Like, look at what we've done. Like, look at what, you know, our child's done. Of course, we encourage our child, but it's like, wow, like, I taught our child that. Like,
yeah.
It's just cool to just...
And you should take pride in that. I mean, I'm proud of it, seeing it from my perspective. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of our child. I'm proud of the both of you as this unit, because it's really cool to just, like you said, see that progression and growth, and the pride that not just you feel, but our child feels it too. Mm-hmm. Like, when there's an understanding of a lesson and a completion of it and a mastery of it, oh my gosh, grandma, grandpa, they all hear about it. You know, like, there's a significant amount of pride that our child carries around, and it's really cool.
Yeah, and I don't want to come off as too, like, prideful. I am humble still. I'm humbled every single day when we go into our room.
Oh yeah.
And learn.
Yeah.
Because I'm learning too. Like, I don't know everything. Like I said, this is coming from more of a Montessori beginner's home environment. So, but yeah, another thing that I found to be rewarding out of all of this too is not just what we do within our homeschool room, but what we do outside. Like I think we've come a long way with being comfortable of being just at home versus going outside and learning about, I don't know, we just recently learned about layers of soil, the layers of the earth. Now we're on the layers of the ocean. Like, it's just been fun to learn about these different earth science topics with, you know, our Montessori curriculum, because it takes us outside and we're like, oh yeah, like, that we learned about this, you know, playing with the worms, you know, because we don't see a lot because we live in the desert. Like, It was a big eye-opener, like, when we made our wormeries, our 2 wormeries.
Right.
We put a few bean seeds in them, but they were growing in the dark.
In the dark.
No sunlight.
They were in a cabinet.
But just seeing the worms, like, at work. I didn't see that growing up
I know.
in my school. Like, so I think that's been really rewarding too. Just, you know, going outside. Like, you know, like, I didn't own a pair of hiking shoes or whatever. Our child didn't our child didn't own a pair of hiking boots either. Like, we have learned to just be outside and learned how to take care of the environment, and we've learned all of these earthy things.
Oh, absolutely. It's really fun to have it. I don't think of it as like Montessori like drove us outside, but it kind of like opened our eyes a little more.
Right.
To like,
definitely.
Oh my gosh, we could not only just be outside for enjoyment's sake, but all of the things that are going into these lessons, they're coming outside, and not by us like prompting them. You know, our child will point them out.
Right, and it's not like I forced our child to learn about soil. It was kind of just like, oh, we're playing in the mud like every other day.
Right.
You know, and then, you know, I get tired of, you know, cleaning our child off from the mud and everything. And then, you know, I'm like, why not? We just learn about the layers of soil, you know, because you see that on Instagram or, you know, whatever mom, you know, put up on Instagram. Like, it's just been fun to learn how to be outside and enjoy what we have, you know.
Yeah.
We have what we have. Let's use what we have and we have outside, and just go for it. Be outside. I think that we've benefited a lot from that.
For sure.
Because, before we had our child, we were homebodies.
We were big homebodies. Couch potatoes, homebodies, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Even though we played sports our entire lives.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the sports ended and so we stayed inside. I don't know. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that will be the end of this podcast for now. But thank you for listening, and tune in for the next one. All right. Bye.